Yeah.
This is Geek Therapy Radio.
What are we waiting for?
And now your mental curator, Johnny Hamburger.
Welcome to Geek Therapy Radio. I am your mental curator, Johnny Hamburger. It is the new year. It is actually, I think this is the second show of the new year. Usually I keep things evergreen, so I don't know why I mentioned that. I'm coming out of the gate right now on this show, this episode of Geek Therapy Radio, with the cheekiness. I am going to be facetious here, but I think I have this feeling that most of you listening, are going to agree with me. And that is that modern country music is currently, by far, the worst genre of music on the face of the planet. In my opinion, the reason it's so horrible and suffering so badly is that, in brief, modern country is trying to be redneck, hip-hop, and R&B. Let's listen to these quick song samples.
Baby, lay on back and relax. Kick your pretty feet up on my dash.
Dancing in the kitchen, you singing my favorite song.
I'm a dirt road in the headlights. I'm a mama's boy, I'm a fist fight. I know you had a long day. You ain't feeling them downtown lights. I don't know about you, but I never walk up and talk to. I know that I'll be a mess.
Pure garbage. The lot of it. In other words, country music isn't being true to itself. It's trying to emulate other popular genres and stick to a formula that isn't true to its roots. It used to be that people may not have personally liked country music, but at least they still respected the uniqueness of the genre. At its most basic, all you needed was 3 chords and a story. Johnny Cash and Dolly Parton sounded different and had their own unique style, but they both stayed true to form. They told stories. They didn't rely on copying the formulas of alternate music styles. Yes, there may have been nods here and there to rock and roll, even R&B, but they didn't copy and paste the rhythm sections from those genres. Listening to a modern country song is literally listening to a copy and pasted, more boring version of a hip-hop beat. Nothing wrong with hip-hop. Country music used to be one of the last bastions of authentic musicianship in popular music. Vince Gill and more recently Brad Paisley are true modern-day guitar gods, considered as highly as Eric Clapton, B.B. King, Buddy Guy, or even Stevie Ray Vaughan. In fact, Paisley and Gill worked with B.B., Clapton, and many more of the guitar gods in their echelons. They are that good. And country music was one of the last places you could hear a true guitar slinger on the radio playing a true riff-driven song, complete with guitar solos, slide solos, fiddle solos, etc. You sure as heck wouldn't hear a guitar solo in modern top 40 rock, other than maybe John Mayer. But that's a separate discussion. Now, in modern country, you quite literally have the same formula copy and pasted ad nauseum and sung by the same cliche country boy bedroom voice. Every one of them singing about partying on the tailgate of their truck, getting laid, and going to church on Sunday. Wash, rinse, repeat. What other genre has the same beat and talks about partying and getting laid? All right, hip-hop. Again, nothing against hip-hop. It's just stupid that country is copying another genre. Hey, hip-hop is popular. Let's make country hip-hop. No, it doesn't work. It's stupid. The difference is, in hip-hop, you are 10,000 times more likely to hear poetry and a story. The beat and musical style is unique to hip-hop and R&B. The poetry and story might not be to, everyone's cup of tea, but it is a craft nonetheless. You might not like Busta Rhymes or Eminem, but there's a reason they've achieved the success they've achieved. That's a really dumb sentence to say. There's a reason why they're so successful. They can spin words like the Harlem Globetrotters spin basketballs, or a chef creates world-class cuisines. Yeah, not every single one of Eminem's songs is great. Some are bad, of course. Some are very bad. What is spaghetti? Mom's spaghetti? But you get my point. Not a single modern pop country song is good by any stretch of the imagination. The cookie cutter beat is designed to make you sway your hips at any cookie cutter saloon while you get drunk on cookie cutter Bud Light. It's all designed to sedate you into being distracted to the fact that you are not engaging in any artistic expression. It's to lull you into shutting off your creative spirit, to turn off your heart and embrace the lethargic warmth of mediocrity and getting drunk on watered down alcohol. Woo-wee! But you know what? In a classic Geek Therapy Radio twist, I have a Florida Georgia Line album in my car. And absolutely, it is pure auditory and sensory white noise. No pun intended. There is no self-aware, thoughtful, artistic person among us who doesn't need a break sometimes. Whose only desire once in a while is to turn off their brain with a beer and some cookie cutter, white noise, artistically unengaging music. So, that's the purpose of most modern country music. To pacify and sedate the mind like auditory opiates. Like an addict, there's a lot of people too deep into modern country music to realize it's the worst music currently on the face of the planet. If the aliens tuned in for the first time to planet Earth and heard modern country music, they'd turn around. They would not give us warp. They would not give us a cure to cancer. They'd bail, say, that planet's not worth it based on what we just heard. Seriously. But again, I myself have Florida Georgia Line in the car. I don't listen to it all the time. I'm just saying it exists in my quote-unquote jukebox in my car. I've even covered a Florida Georgia Line song after my divorce, and when that was just because I wanted to chew bubblegum and it didn't have the emotional energy to put into a juicy Stevie Ray Vaughan steak. Okay? The point is, I say it's all crap, but I have Florida Georgia Line. It serves its purpose in moderation. Modern country music is by definition terrible. But like a painkiller, it serves a temporary purpose. The danger is when you don't realize you're addicted to it and start missing out on other great music, even great country music. So, maybe pepper in some Johnny Cash or Vince Gill once in a while. Make sure you have a pulse. Okay, obviously I was being silly with a lot of this segment. It's only my opinion. You're, of course, entitled to your own opinion. Either way, don't go anywhere. More Geek Therapy Radio coming up. An Audi in every budget. Audi Central Houston and AudiCentralHouston.com. Tell them Geek Therapy Radio sent you. Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. I am your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger. Thanks for tuning in, and if you're listening to the podcast, ditto. Make sure you're subscribed. If you're watching this on YouTube, ditto again. I know you have no shortage of content to choose from on YouTube, so I truly, truly appreciate even your consideration in subscribing, because I know you certainly don't have to. So again, thanks for thinking about it, and thanks for subscribing if you do. Don't be a stranger. We're all geeks about something. Geek Therapy Radio is designed to welcome everyone to the oasis in this desert of politics. You know, we really do have more in common than that which the media would tell you drives us apart. I don't care whether you're black or white or Republican or Democrat. Doesn't matter. We love Star Wars. We love Star Trek. We love remote control airplanes and remote control cars and fast boats and fast cars and airplanes and astronomy and all sorts of geeky, cool things. So that's what Geek Therapy Radio is all about. Let's celebrate our inner geek. Let's share our geek things with each other. All right. I think it's time that we check in with Atari, specifically the controversial VCS that's slated for release this spring of 2019. The last time we discussed the VCS on Geek Therapy Radio was June of 2018, and honestly, I haven't thought much about it since then, beyond a passing curiosity if the project was still making any headway. And guess what? Turns out, it is. It's making some progress. So, let's discuss. Now, Atari released its earnings report this past December of 2018. And lo and behold, Atari made about $12.7 million. We're going to say some figures here, but I promise you it's brief. Atari made about $12.7 million in total earnings for the period ending in September of 2018. That's up 27% year over year. Operating income is also up 87% to about $2.5 million. And these are all converted from euros because Atari is now a French company. So yeah, operating income is up about 87% to about $2.5 billion. And shareholder equity spiked dramatically 194% to about $26.5 million US dollars. Okay, great. Numbers are fun. It's no surprise. Modern day Atari isn't pulling hundreds of millions of dollars like big dogs as EA, Electronic Arts and others. But that's not really the point I'm trying to make here. What is promising, to me at least, isn't even the fact that they've earned anything at all over the last earning period. The most curious number when you dig a little deeper is operating expenses, specifically research and development. From September 2017 to September 2018, R&D expenditures is up by around 90%. That means they're working on something, for sure. Obviously, it is no surprise to assume that the bulk of this R&D expense is going towards the VCS. And to me, this shows promise in plain black and white. That is not to say that the VCS won't suffer the same fate as past flops, like the ill-fated Ouya, or however you pronounce that. But I think, despite obvious market hurdles that I'll get into in just a moment here, Atari's revenue and spending habits over the past year, at least, shows that they are serious about bringing the VCS to market in earnest. So people saying that it's an outright scam? Doubtful. There is mounting evidence that it very well exists and should ship by the planned spring of 2019. So Atari goes so far as to say that not only will the VCS be released, but the VCS will impact earnings in its next fiscal year, ending in March of 2020. This further indicates, hopefully, that pending unforeseen influences, the VCS will ship by spring 2019, honoring the backers who have put up over $3 million of their own money to pre-order the VCS, which I still maintain pre-ordering is stupid. Make a company earn your money. Don't spend money with a company before you have a product. But that's up to you. If you have that much faith in it, I can't tell you what to do with your money. Anyways, again, in short, Atari and its shareholders are counting on spring 2019 release, not just release, but shipping of the VCS to directly impact its 2020 earnings report. So, yeah, they want to release it. They're planning on releasing it. They're spending money on R&D for something, so they're probably going to release it. So in light of this most recent update in earnings in the report, is my confidence in the VCS seeing the light of day increased in any way? Well, yeah, in short, I don't see any incentive for Atari's longevity not to ship the VCS. That is to say, there's no real incentive for Atari to scam us. Where my confidence wanes is in market viability. Will Atari sell enough VCSs to make the entire venture worthwhile? That, yeah, is yet to be seen, and here's why I'm skeptical. Forget the obvious fact that it will be going head-to-head with mainstream consoles from Sony and Microsoft. Let's be real honest here. It won't make a dent in their bottom line, in all likelihood. The real competition, in my mind, is within its niche. It is an open platform running Linux. In my humble opinion, and yours is of course welcome, its competition is in the smart TV peripheral arena. Specifically, the undisputed heavyweight champion of this particular niche roost, the NVIDIA Shield TV. The Shield costs the same at its most expensive as the VCS, around $300, and the Shield is cheaper at entry level. However, the horsepower and support and infrastructure is identical throughout. I'm not even talking about NVIDIA's game streaming service, either from users' own gaming PCs on the network or from NVIDIA's private servers, or the NVIDIA servers regardless. The open platform nature of Android on the Shield and Linux on the VCS means that its niche is going to likely be among the serious, I keep saying serious, the serious tech enthusiast. And without beating around the bush any further, I'm talking about those of us who are into serious emulation capabilities. What it may boil down to in the niche market is which device, the VCS or the NVIDIA, can run GameCube or PlayStation 2 emulators better. NVIDIA's aging X1 SoC or VCS's AMD APU with R7 graphics and access to 8 gigabytes of shared system RAM. That was a lot of numbers and letters and things that I just shoved at you right there. I'm just saying which is going to be more powerful. We'll see in actual application and efficiency and everything like that. Which can run the heavy emulators better? That's what it might all boil down to for the VCS. And again, the underlying issue with all of this is that we're talking about a very narrow demographic of consumer. Unless the unlikely Hail Mary scenario occurs that the VCS miraculously does well enough to take Sony and Microsoft down a peg or two, its fiercest competition is with the NVIDIA Shield. And while the Shield may be doing well in its own right in the shadow of mainstream consoles, is it doing well enough for there to be much profit for the VCS to even cut into in the first place? We'll see. As always, like I said before, your opinions are most certainly welcome. Please be good to each other, including yourself. Embrace your geek thing, your inner geek. And if you're watching on YouTube, maybe consider subscribing. I'm making my march towards 1,000 subs here in 2019. So if you consider subscribing, that would be great. I truly appreciate even the consideration. And maybe tell your friends. I know that you have a lot to choose from on this platform, and you certainly don't have to subscribe to anyone. So that's why I simply truly appreciate even the consideration. If you're listening to the podcast or the broadcast, we'll be right back with more Geek Therapy Radio. Audi Central Houston and AudiCentralHouston.com. There is an Audi, believe it or not, in every budget, whether it's used or new, whether you want, a used A4 from 2010 to a new 2019 Audi R8, or even a new e-tron that doesn't burn any gas at all. That's coming out here in 2019. A6, A8, Q6, or sorry, not Q6, Q8s. Whatever you want, all the sexiness, all the design, all the safety, all the fuel efficiency of an Audi can be yours at Audi Central Houston and AudiCentralHouston.com. When you go to Audi Central Houston, be sure to tell them that Geek Therapy Radio sent you. Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. I am your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger. If you are not already subscribed to this here Geek Therapy Radio podcast, like, for instance, if you're just discovering this broadcast on KPRC 950 AM, surprise, surprise, it's 2019. This is a podcast. This broadcast is really promotion for the podcast. Let's just get real. I'm being honest with you. I'm doing you a favor here. Just being honest. 2019, this broadcast on KPRC 950 is just advertising the fact that this radio show is also a podcast. So make sure you like, follow, and subscribe to Geek Therapy Radio all over Facebook, Instagram. I'm hunting for 1,000 subscribers by the end of 2019. I think I'll hit that goal. But subscribe to Geek Therapy Radio on YouTube. And like I said before, if you're not already subscribed to this podcast, you can subscribe to it anywhere. We prefer the iHeartRadio app, but you can subscribe on iTunes. I'm having trouble talking. iTunes, Spreaker, Google Podcasts. You can ask Alexa to play the Geek Therapy Radio podcast on iHeartRadio. You can get the podcast all over the place. That's all I'm saying. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for considering subscribing, and don't be a stranger. Let me know what your geek thing is. We're all geeks about something. Geek Therapy Radio is an oasis in the political desert. Nothing wrong with politics, nothing wrong with talking about politics. It is very important, but you know what? We have more in common than that which the media would have you believe drives us apart. Black or white, Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Green Party, whatever. We all like Star Wars, and we all like... Oh, my phone is ringing. It's always ringing. Why is it always ringing? We all like Star Wars. We all like astronomy. We all like Legos. Or Legos, sorry. We all like cars, so we all like airplanes. We all have our geek thing, you know? We all like building stuff. Whatever your geek thing is, don't be a stranger. Like, follow, subscribe, all the good stuff. Geek Therapy Radio, all over the place. Social media, podcast, YouTube, all of it. And hear the broadcast, KPRC 950 AM. Let's get into it. Let's get into it in this, the longest segment of Geek Therapy Radio each week. Tesla is sued yet again after yet another fatal crash. And in this case, a family in Florida is suing Tesla for making an quote-unquote unreasonably dangerous car. So, I mean, there's not a whole lot of Teslas on the road, so it's not like a whole lot of them are crashing, like per capita, you know, per car on the road. I don't know what it works out statistically that it's a Tesla involved in an accident, but it's not many. And yes, there have been a few high-profile crashes involving Teslas, specifically involving autopilot, which I still maintain and do agree that calling your what do you call it? Your cruise control, basically, your glorified cruise control autopilot will mislead the more technically ignorant among us. Autopilot makes you picture, oh, I don't have to do anything. No, that's not the case. You still have to pay attention. And despite Tesla having warnings all over the place to keep your hand on the wheel, stay awake, stay alert, keep your feet near the pedals, that it's only an assistance to the driver. It's not a completely autonomous taking over for human input. Despite all these warnings, people still mistreat it and they go sliding under 18-wheelers and killing themselves and smashing into medians because they put too much trust in the technology when Tesla itself never asked you to put so much trust in it. In fact, like I just said, they put up warnings everywhere. Don't take your freaking hands off the wheel. Don't start reading a newspaper. Pay attention. This is an assistance. But they don't do themselves any favor calling it autopilot. Just call it driver assist. Anyway, so what's different about this case is that it wasn't a high-profile case of Tesla's autopilot, quote-unquote, failing. This is a case where this teenager in Florida crashed his Tesla, which we won't get into the politics of all that, crashed his Tesla doing 116 miles per hour. Right off the bat, there's not a car on the road today designed or specified to keep you 100% safe in a collision at any speed, really, but definitely not at 116 miles per hour. That kid, unfortunately, would have passed away, would have actually maybe more chance in another car that wasn't as highly safety rated as a Tesla. Teslas are very high safety rated by the Highway Agency here in the United States and abroad. They're very safe cars. But 116 miles an hour, physics exist. Physics doesn't give a crap about safety ratings. Safety ratings take into account physics. And 116 miles per hour is a lot of kinetic energy, a lot of momentum. In this case, the car crashed, 116 miles an hour, bounced all around, and the batteries burst into flames. So one of the parts of this lawsuit is that Tesla did not make their batteries safe enough reasonably, which is just preposterous. No, it doesn't matter what car you're in, what the battery's in. If you're going 116, if you're breaking the law by dozens and dozens of miles per hour, all bets are off to safety. So the batteries burst into flames. It's stored energy. It is stored energy enough to give you a range of hundreds of miles. And I think that the general public really has this idea that, oh, there's no gasoline, that means it's not flammable. No, there is still tons of potential energy stored chemically in those batteries. And if something happens, if a runaway eruption, a runaway chemical reaction occurs, Those batteries are going up. All that stored up energy is coming out. In the case of lithium-ion batteries, a huge and hot fire. So this is what happened in this case of this crash. The real reason why the family is suing is because here's where I'll reserve some of my judgment, at least. This teenager had a previous ticket, speeding ticket, for driving, 113 miles an hour on a different Florida highway. 112 miles an hour in the exact same Tesla. This kid was already busted for speeding 112 miles an hour prior to this. Get a ticket on the record. The crash that killed him, he was going 116 miles per hour. I'll let you deal with that information how you want as I move on to this. The family is suing Tesla because after that previous 112 mile per hour ticket, the parents brought the Tesla to the dealership to put an artificial limiter on the car, limiting the car to 85 miles per hour after their son got a 112 mile per hour ticket. So theoretically, the kid shouldn't have been able to go over 85 miles an hour. The Tesla dealership, their facility, put that governor in there. Now, what happened is they brought that Tesla to the dealership to get some service on the batteries, and apparently they say that the dealership made an unauthorized removal of that limiter and didn't tell them that they removed the limiter. And again, I leave this up for your judgment here. And here's the twist to all of it. Here's what it all boils down to for me. The most interesting part of this, it's super sad. A family has to be without their teenage son. That's horrible. And Tesla agrees with that. Of course, it's crazy. They issued an over-the-air update taking more warnings and precautions, even more red tape, even more nanny state to warn drivers of the status of the limiter. But here's why this case seems to me, in my just personal opinion, to be a frivolous money grab. Because again, 160 miles an hour, no car is going to save you. But that has nothing to do with the governor. The governor should have kept it at 85 miles an hour. Here's the rub. Here's the interesting thing. The jury they pull, most likely, the jury of peers, is going to be possibly technologically illiterate. Meaning that there's a good chance there's going to be less technical savvy people on that jury in this case. A case which a very smart 18-year-old kid with a Tesla could potentially and rather easily, figure out a way to hack into it somehow to remove that limiter. In other words, that the limiter was engaged in a way that possibly the teenager, that very tech-savvy teenager, had access to undo and remove, since it's just software-based. Is the jury going to be technically savvy enough to understand this potential issue in the case? Probably not. It's a very interesting case. Just like that's interesting, Geek Therapy Radio will continue to be interesting and is coming up with one more segment at least, right after this. Don't go anywhere. Kung Fu Saloon, 5317 Washington Avenue. Great beer, great drinks, great food, karaoke, and arcade games. What more could you want? Kung Fu Saloon, 5317 Washington Avenue. Welcome back to the final segment of Geek Therapy Radio. I am still your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger. I hope you've been enjoying Geek Therapy Radio this week so far. I'm backed up in spots a little bit, so for my podcast listeners, I'm going to take care of that. It will only take about 60 seconds. So let's take care of that. Audi Central Houston and AudiCentralHouston.com. One of my bucket list cars is an Audi R8. I don't care what year, I don't care what vintage, an Audi R8 is on my bucket list. And when I can finally afford one day, hopefully, to indulge in such a endeavor, Audi Central Houston is where I'm going to go because I already go to Audi Central Houston. They've taken good care of me. They took care of my dad when he was around. I know Audi Central Houston, and I know that they'll take great care of you. There's an Audi in every budget, from a used A3 to a brand new R8 to the Audi e-tron that doesn't burn any gas. Audi Central Houston and AudiCentralHouston.com. Go check them out and tell them Geek Therapy Radio sent you. Also here, we'll do a spot for worththewait.co, WEIGHT. As geeks, we have troubles sometimes. Troubles, so nobody knows the trouble I've seen. With our guts. Nutrition is important, and they will help you at worththewait.co. That's worththewait, WEIGHT.co. Let us now dig into recent tech news and tech happenings and geeky things about TVs and computers and stuff like that. CES 2019 has wrapped, and I've got a takeaway or two from it. Some things I'm excited about, some things I think are silly. If you haven't heard it, I checked in with Michael Garfield, the high-tech Texan, earlier this week, and for actually a bonus episode of Midweek Geek, to get a report from the floor of CES 2019. And one of the big things, I'll just lead into it with this, my thoughts on things, are TVs, televisions. Televisions seem to be one of the biggest things at CES this year, specifically displaying 8K technology. 4K is a reasonably recent format. As me and Michael Garfield discussed, there really isn't a whole ton of things being broadcast in 4K. Now, you can theoretically game in 4K. It's really hard to do. You need a very powerful graphics processor. Blu-rays, you can get Blu-rays in 4K. There's some 4K content on streaming services, very highly compressed 4K, that is, from, Hulu and Netflix and Amazon Prime and all that kind of stuff. But now they're pushing 8K. 8K, I don't think we're going to see 8K resolution mainstream for years. I think, this is just my opinion, and this is I think a lot of PC gamers are going to kind of wrap their heads around this more easily than others possibly. But even now today, you need an extreme amount of graphical horsepower to push 4K resolution. Roughly 4,000 pixels by 4,000 pixels. That's a lot of pixels to push. And even right now, even though the most powerful graphics cards, let's say from NVIDIA, the RTX 2080 and RTX 2080 Ti, and so on, it takes a lot of heavy lifting to move 4,000 by 4,000 pixels. Right now, 2019. And I know what some of you may be thinking. It's a different scenario to be pushing 4K graphics, that is having computations on the processors dedicated to the algorithms associated with 3D modeling and shading and all that kind of stuff. It takes a lot less horsepower just to display a 2D image when you're not calculating a 3D rendering in real time. I get that. But the fact remains, even 2D pushing 8K takes a lot of beef, takes a lot of muscle, and I just don't see 8K. It takes a lot of bandwidth. And while we do have very high bandwidth, high-speed internet, and all this kind of stuff, all it boils down to is 8,000 by 8,000 pixels takes exponentially more resources to push than 4K. We're not there yet. So it's cool that we can display the technology. Here's what's on the horizon, but where is that horizon? And I'm not saying that to really knock the technology, 8K TV technology. It's really cool to see that. I mean, on display at CES 2019, we had personal flying drones, like drone taxis. Uber displayed their concept for drone taxis. Audi was displaying prototype technology for their vehicles. That's kind of what CES is about, is a whole lot of it is just to display prototype technology. So 8K is one of those prototype technologies. It's going to be a long time before the average consumer, before before the TVs come down below $5,000 basically, and there's enough 8K content to even put on the 8K TV. It's going to be a long time before we get there. You could argue this kind of ties into my Murphy's Law argument I made a few episodes ago, that we're plateauing now. That technology doesn't advance at the 18-month interval like it used to with Murphy's Law, that right now we're at about an average of 3 years for the doubling of technology and processing power. But regardless of that, 8K is a long way off. But TVs nonetheless were all the rage, and my friend Nathan, who's been on the show, sent me a link. He said, maybe you could talk about this on a segment. Samsung has it sounds ridiculous to say it, a 219-inch TV. I say that to say this. There is such a thing as far as TVs, too big. I know that's sacrilege. I know there's a lot of geeks out there saying, how dare you? That's blasphemous to say that a TV can be too big. Yeah, I know. But hear me out here. Most of us don't have rooms in our house that could even physically fit a 219-inch TV, and it's possible that even a 55-inch, just an average TV, is too big if the room is too small and your seating arrangement is too close to the TV. You're still craning your neck, looking around, moving around, just to see a 55-inch TV if you're sitting too close to it. So yeah, 219-inch TV is ridiculous for the general 99%. Maybe if you're the 1% that can afford a room big enough to necessitate a 219-inch big screen TV, more power to you. Please invite me over for the Super Bowl. Can I say Super Bowl? Can I say it? Well, I just did. Anyways, computer technology. Laptops are finally getting the RTX 2000 series of graphics cards. We were waiting for that. We anticipated that would happen and be on display here at CES 2019. So officially, laptops, there are now laptop variants of the RTX 2000 series cards. So I am actually pretty excited about that. Apple never shows up to CES. Apple has no business being at CES. They usually do their stuff all by themselves in the summertime at some point, but I'm waiting for big things from Apple. As far as CPUs, they might be working on, my theory is that the baseline MacBook, not the MacBook Air, not the MacBook Pro, but that the MacBook is going to be getting the same CPU that powers the iPad Pro. That's my prediction. They're going to an in-house, basically Qualcomm chipset in their laptops. That's my prediction. That's what I'm waiting for. As far as Intel CPUs and everything, I'm excited about the 11th generation. Is it 9th or 11th generation? They skipped something. The latest generation of integrated graphics. We should be getting quite a big boost in graphics performance built into our Intel CPUs, like the i3, i5, i7, i9, all that kind of stuff. Should be getting a good graphic bump there, so I'm excited about that. Those are the things that I'm most excited about at CES. It's cool to see the 8K TVs. It's awesome that finally we're getting the RTX 2000 series graphics cards in laptops and mobile devices, and that Intel is bumping the built-in graphics performance of their chips. Those are the biggest things from CES that have me excited. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for listening to Geek Therapy Radio this week. I know you have your choice in a lot of broadcasts and podcasts, so it means a lot to me that you listen to Geek Therapy Radio and that you go like, follow, and subscribe this Geek Therapy Radio social media, Facebook, Instagram, especially the YouTube. I'm pushing for 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. I put so much cool stuff on YouTube that I can't put on air or in a podcast. So much cool stuff to show you. So make sure you subscribe to the Geek Therapy Radio podcast on YouTube and the Geek Therapy Radio podcast on your favorite podcast app that we here at iHeartMedia prefer, the iHeartRadio app.